hear me at the back? Can you hear? Okay. So just to remind you that this world, the whole nanotechnology platform was introduced by Richard Feynman when he said there is plenty of room at the bottom, and when we say nanotechnology and nanoscience, it refers to systems at a length scale between 1 and 100 nanometer, which gives new properties and functions to the materials and new devices. So just to remind you that there is a nomenclature when we talk of different types of nanosystems. You are all familiar with three-dimensional systems which we come across. Now if you cut down one dimension, but in two dimensions it is infinite, it is called two-dimensional system. And if you cut down another dimension, make it very narrow, very small, then it's called 1D system like nanowires, nanotubes. And if you cut down all the dimensions and all x, y and z, it's called quantum dot or zero-dimensional system. This is just a technical slide just to reflect that the dimensionality matters a lot and the properties of the material depend on how many free dimensions and how many confined dimensions are there for nanosystems. For example, if you take semiconductor material, you can now tune the band gap as you wish, and this is called band gap engineering. So if you look at the color of this quantum dots of cadmium selenide, it can have any color right from emission from blue to red, and this is what is used in designing the materials of your choice. If you take metal particles, how they look, that also depends on the size. For example, if you take silver nanoprisms of 100 nanometer, it will look like almost like orange. If you take gold spheres of 100 nanometer, it will look yellowish. But the same system, gold, if you take 50 nanometer, it will look green. So if you have necklace out of gold nanoparticles, it will look green rather than the color you like. And this is because of surface plasmon, they depend on the size of the particle. What I will do in this 20 minutes is to take only one element in the periodic table, namely carbon, and tell you what are the new things you can get when you get carbon in the new avatar. It is nano avatar, and it is a beautiful element because in one element you have so many properties depending on the nano dimensions. So this is a very the summary slide. All of you know that carbon has two forms, diamond and graphite, and they are very different properties, and that is because the bonding is different. Now in 1985, the nano form of carbon, which is called quantum dot, was discovered. It's called Buckminster fullerene. It's a molecule which is 7 angstrom in size. It's called C60. And then 1991, carbon nanotubes were discovered, which is what I have shown here. And these nanotubes are 1 or 2 nanometer in diameter, and their length is about few micron. So what was missing was a two-dimensional form of carbon, namely single sheet of carbon atoms. So that was produced in 2004 and identified the properties called graphene. And so this is the two-dimensional form. So before that, these are the nanotubes which I mentioned, and after this, these nanotubes can come in various properties. These are different nomenclature, the way nanotubes are made, and depending on the nanotube size and the way it is made, it can be semiconductor or metallic. And it has exceptional properties because these nanotubes have high tensile strength. It's extremely difficult to break, thermally stable, it has high thermal conductivity and many other properties. And right now the nanotube market is about $1 billion a year. So all these beautiful properties of nanotubes have enormous applications, and already there are many products in the market which use these carbon nanotubes. This is a two-dimensional form of carbon as mentioned, single sheet of carbon atoms called graphene, and it was made by a very simple technique of mechanical exfoliation of graphite. And this is something, is a technical slide, but just to reflect that the electrons in graphene are very special. They behave somewhat like photons. They have zero mass, they have zero effective mass, and they have very interesting properties. So these electrons in graphene are very different from electrons in silicon or germanium or whatever materials you use. So this is called, they obey the same equation as photons. So this is just a cartoon to show that in a normal semiconductor we will have Schrodinger equation which these electrons obey, but in graphene they obey what is called the Dirac equation, exactly like for relativistic particle, which gives many new properties to graphene. Now graphene is absolutely beautiful because it has many properties. It is the thinnest material because it is just single atom, largest surface area, strongest material ever measured, more than diamond and flexible. It stiffest known material, most stretchable and pliable. You can bend graphene like a bed sheet. That is not true for diamond. So this is the only material which is very stiff, at the same time very flexible. Then you have highest thermal conductivity, very high thermal conductivity. It can take highest current density at room temperature. It is completely impermeable. Even helium atoms can't go through. But in special circumstances, water can go through, and this has many properties. Conducts electricity, lightest charge, and so on. So you can see that it has many properties which are very fascinating. And for this work, Nobel Prize was given in physics in 2010 to these two people from University of Manchester. At the same time, the same group showed that any material you take which is layered like mica, any material which you know, you can make a two-dimensional form. You can remove one layer and put it on another material, and this has opened many properties. Now any material you have which is layered, you can take. And the biggest family is called transition metal dichalcogenides. This is like MOS2, many different compounds, and all of them can be made in two-dimensional form. For example, you can take molybdenum disulfide, molybdenum selenide. All these can be made in two-dimensional form. Interesting part is that they have very different properties. Some of the materials are semiconducting, some of them are superconducting, some are magnetic, and so on. So it's a beautiful system where you can make two-dimensional form of any of this material and get very exotic properties. The latest one, the latest addition in this family is black phosphorus. Black phosphorus is also layered, and you can make two-dimensional form, one sheet of black phosphorus. Beauty is, here the atoms are not in the same plane, they are puckered, and that gives new properties. So like carbon, you got graphene, from phosphorus, you got phosphorine. So now the effort is to discover the new two-dimensional forms which have some very interesting properties. Now you can play God. What you can do, you can take any two-dimensional material and make another two-dimensional material on the top. So you can make now artificial structures which have completely different properties. This is like Lego. When you were a child, you were playing Lego. Similarly, now you can make two-dimensional material, put one over another, and you can get new forms of matter. This is called heterostructures. So now market projections are very good. Graphene has enormous applications, and the biggest application is that single sheet of graphite, which is graphene, conducts electricity like a metal, but it is transparent. So all your cell phones, if you have, they have a coating which is called indium tin oxide, which is transparent but conducting. Now the idea is, can graphene be used to make these transparent conductors? And already there are applications, and it is about a $1 billion market. Already some cell phones have been made using this IT replacement on a trial basis, and these phones, these are the phones which have graphene as a conductor and a transparent object. And now the idea is, if we can reduce the cost of graphene to what it is now, in future it may have a possibility to be used as transparent conducting electrode. I don't want you to see this because this is a recent article which shows that the market is huge. It is $2.4 billion market for graphene in next few years. I will just give you one example, that Raman scattering, which was discovered by Professor Raman in 1928, is a wonderful experimental probe to study nanomaterials, because the Raman signatures are very different depending on what material you have, what two-dimensional material. As all of you know, that Raman scattering is inelastic scattering of light. When the green light falls, what comes out of the material is either low frequency or high frequency, namely the color changes, and the property of the material is reflected how much these photons are shifted in energy, and this is what you use for characterizing. So Raman you can do in contactless manner, so you can characterize your material without touching it. It has high spatial resolution now with special techniques, and it is sensitive to external perturbations. Now in nanoscience it has a very special role, because now you can characterize what nanomaterials you have. You can find out what type of nanotubes you have, what type of number of layers you have in two-dimensional material, how much disorder is there, how many defects are there, and so on. But at the same time, you can also look inside a material and find out how electrons behave, because when electrons move inside a solid, they are scattered by phonons, which can be studied by Raman scattering. And this is the latest technique a few years back, where you can put a metallic tip like a scanning tunneling microscope, and now the spatial resolution can be as much as 50 to 100 nanometer. This is something we do in our lab, and this is one of the very powerful probe of nanoscience. For example, for graphene, if you don't have any tip nearby with very low intensity, you may not get any Raman line, which is the black signal. But moment you bring the metallic tip from a scanning tunneling microscope, you get a huge Raman signal, and this you can do at a resolution of 50 nanometer. If you have a nanotube, it will breathe in and out, and this frequency depends on the diameter of the tube, and this characterizes the Raman scattering. For example, the radial breathing mode is inversely related to the diameter, and you can get the diameter of the nanotube within 2 minutes of your experiment. So this is a very powerful probe. You can also find out if the nanotube is metallic or semiconducting, and the signal here, which I have plotted on the right side, depends whether it is a metallic tube or a semiconducting tube, and the Raman signatures are very unique. Similarly, for graphene, if you have a single layer versus by 2 layers versus 3 layers versus 4 layers, Raman signatures are very different. For example, on the left side, I think it is cutting it, I don't know why, but on the other panel it's clear that the Raman signatures are very different if it is single layer or bilayer. Now this is the example I just want to give it. This is called a field effect transistor. So how do you make a transistor? You put a graphene, you put 2 contacts and put a gate, and that controls the conductivity of graphene. And this is the way a transistor is made. Now the idea is there any hope of replacing silicon with any other material? So people are exploring new materials, and graphene properties are being studied in relation to being used as a transistor. So we have made a transistor. Now what we do, we put this graphene transistor in a Raman microscope and find out how Raman spectrum changes when the transistor is working or when the transistor is not working, which means when the current is flowing versus when the current is not flowing. And you will be surprised to know that the Raman signatures are extremely sensitive when how much current a transistor has. So these are the various spectra just to reflect that depending on the gate voltage, the Raman signatures, the frequency of the Raman lines change, and this is very nice. So Raman now becomes the fingerprint, it becomes your eyes to look inside the solid, and we plot this as a function of doping, and you can see that it varies hugely. When you dope it, the Raman frequencies increase very much, and so on. All this you can interpret to find out how phonons or how electrons are scattered by phonons. That is the whole idea. Now this gives you microscopic information inside in a very detailed manner, and this tells you whether the graphene is a good material for transistor or not. And this is the kind of study we have done in the last few years. And same thing you can now do with MOS2 and molybdenum disulfide, single layer. You make a transistor and you again realize that the phonons are affected when the transistor is working. From this we find out which phonons are interacting with electrons. And we will be interested to know that all phonons do not interact in the same way. There is no democracy in the world of phonon. They are very selective, only few phonons interact, others don't interact. So this is the kind of thing we have done just to see same thing for phosphorine, and the similar story is there. The last part is to tell you about sensors, because sensors are there in your everyday life. So I will just give you one example of graphene sensor. So what you do for any sensor, you have to have a bioreceptor, and then you have some signal coming out, and then from that signal is what you need to measure. So this is what we have done to make a glucose sensor using graphene oxide, which is a functionalized form of graphene in a field effect transistor. So this is I will not give you the detail, but what we do is we take graphene oxide, put a molecule which is very specific to glucose, it's called APBA, and that recognizes only glucose. So we put that on a transistor and show that it current changes when there is a glucose attachment. And this gives you a very sensitive detector of glucose, right from 1 nanomolar to almost like 1 molar. So this is the way any biosensor will work, and here we are showing that these 2D materials are very sensitive for biosensors. The last part of my talk is a new concept where we have combined the two nanomaterials with fiber optics. Fiber optics, I think you all know, we use it for communication, but I'll give you an example where it is used as a biosensor. So what you do, you have a fiber. What is a fiber? You have a core and you have a shell. This you know from the school. Now what we do, we write a grating on the fiber using light, and this grating is called fiber Bragg grating, because when you put light through this fiber, all the lights will pass through except one wavelength. That wavelength is Bragg scattered. So one wavelength will come back, and that is called Bragg wavelength. Now what we do in this technology, that we take this fiber, write the grating and remove the clad. The clad is replaced by graphene. So now we have a very sensitive clad. This is the way we make it. So we replace the clad with a two-dimensional material, and on that graphene we put the antibodies or the molecules which are used for recognizing. And now when something attaches to it, then the reflective index of the clad changes, and that changes the Bragg wavelength. So this is the way biosensors is made, and this is something we have again shown for glucose. We take a grating, we remove the clad, put graphene oxide, put ATPA, and now when glucose comes and attaches, it shifts the Bragg wavelength, and you can see that it is extremely sensitive. We have shown that this is the most sensitive detector right now, which can detect glucose right up to less than 1 nanomolar. And we have also shown that glycolated hemoglobin, which you always go to a doctor to get a test, can also be detected with this. And again, this is again a very sensitive detector. So I think I will close this. We have used it for C-reactive protein. Again, the concept is similar. And you can now think of any sensor you want to make. It's a very cheap sensor because this fiber thing is very, very cheap. You write a grating on it, put the nanomaterial, put the biosensors, and then just work with this. So I will just not go through the details and just close this talk to remind you that this nanomaterials, 2D nanomaterials, are extremely interesting materials and in this nanoscience, and we have used it for various electronic properties and also for making biosensors. Thank you very much.